Hello, my wonderful fifth graders. This is Mrs. Kalen. I'm here to visit with you and share our lesson for this week. What we are going to do this week is going to be very short. I know there was some confusion last week about whether we were meeting via Zoom or whether we were going to be watching our pre-recorded videos. So I know a lot of you missed our lesson. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go over some exciting things that we are going to be doing next week and get us ready for that. And then when we're finished here, which is going to be pretty short, I would love for you to take that time to watch last week's video, which I'll repost on our Google Classroom page. So I'm sorry if there was any confusion, but I will let you know the week before whether we are going to be meeting live by Zoom or whether I'm going to be posting a video lesson like this. Usually we're going to be doing this. Next week, however, we are actually going to do a Zoom lesson. And I'm really excited about that. So when we're finished here, make sure you go and watch last week's lesson. The two together will sort of make one class period, and then we'll move on from there. So I want to talk about next week because you guys, you fifth graders, have the delightful opportunity to have your library time on one of my favorite days of the year, Poem in Your Pocket Day, which we will actually be able to celebrate together but not together. Mrs. Neville and I have come up with many really cool ideas for ways that we can celebrate Poem in Your Pocket Day, which when we are at school, you know, we come to school, we bring our poems with us, we share with classmates, you share in library, you share with other teachers. We find creative ways to express these poems to each other. This year, obviously, just like we're having to do everything a little bit differently, because we're at home, we are going to have our poems not necessarily in our pockets, but in other places and other ways of being able to share them. So I'm going to post a sort of a flyer on our Google Classroom page that's going to go over this in more detail, but I just wanted to share a few of the ideas that we had to kind of get you thinking about how you and we want everybody to be participating in this, how you are going to share a poem with your community, with your classmates, with your family, with your teachers, with anybody with your neighbors on Poem in Your Pocket Day, which is next Thursday, April 30th. So some of the ideas that Mrs. Neville and I had for things you could do were things like write a poem in chalk in front of your house for your neighbors to see as they're taking walks through your neighborhood. Post a poem, write it in big paper and post it in the front windows of your house for people to see as they're walking by. Write a poem on a piece of paper and tape it to the bathroom mirror for your family to see when they come in to brush their teeth in the morning. Post it on the refrigerator. You might even post a poem about food somewhere in the kitchen. You can take a video of yourself reciting a poem, reading a poem, take a picture of a poem and text it to somebody. Make it artful, make it creative. You can arrange it any way that you are so inspired. You can use any type of poem to share. Record yourself reciting a poem and send it to your grandparent or another relative who's far away, or even to your best friend in your class. These are all ways that we can share poetry with each other without actually being in the same room. So what we as a fifth grade, as your fifth grade classes are going to do next week is we are going to have our Zoom class next week. I will send out reminders and a link for us to meet, and we are going to have a live poetry reading together. So Thursday, April 30th will really be the celebration of the end of Poetry Month and Poem in Your Pocket Day, and you guys, the fifth graders, have the opportunity to do that together with me. Mrs. Neville and I might also host sort of a drop-in, share your poem in your pocket Zoom sometime that afternoon. We're trying to work that out so that it's something that a whole bunch of different grades can participate in. And we hope that you can share pictures of things that you did, or share a poem in another way, like something that we can do visually together. But we as a class are going to do a poetry reading. So there's Poem in Your Pocket Day, and there's also our class's poetry reading. For our poetry reading, I would love to have some volunteers to read to us, and I will have poems prepared, but I would like to have a few other students who will be able to kind of go around as we're in our Zoom and share poems with each other. So I know who you are. I know that there are students who have already told me how much they love to read aloud and do some dramatic performance and share some poetry. So I am going to reach out to many of you, and I want you to reach out to me, and we can talk this week via email and via Google Classroom about what kind of poems you might want to share. So I have a whole bunch of books at my house of poetry. I have Shel Silverstein. I have, I know this is a favorite of your grade, I'm Just No Good at Rhyming. I'm going to share some of these poems as well. This is something that we love to do. Mrs. Neville and I both love to share these with both fourth grade and fifth grade. And these are really, really fun poems. And we'll share some different ones than you read last year. But I have some other sort of more serious poetry as well. You know, start thinking about what you might want to contribute, but you can find your own poems as well. But if you think that you might want to do this, be one of our readers, we can have a conversation about what you might want to read. If I don't get enough volunteers, I'm going to reach out and ask some people to do it, get some suggestions from your teachers about who may be some willing readers. So we won't have the opportunity to have everybody read, but I'm hoping maybe at least 10 of you would be willing to participate. So I think that will be really fun to be able to do together. Before I sign off and have you go and watch last week's lesson, I have a couple poems to share with you that are, I thought, a really fun and creative and very different way of expressing stories through poems. There's a very famous poem named William Carlos Williams who wrote apology poems. He wrote other types of poems as well, but these poems were serious, some serious and some humorous poems that are letters that are written as apologies that kind of go through a story and explaining the reader's apology for something that had happened. Now, another author named Gail Carson Levine, who you may know as a few of you I know have read some of her books. She wrote a book called Ella Enchanted. She wrote a number of other sort of fairy tale based books. She wrote a book called Forgive Me, I Meant to Do It, which we have in the library. And these are false apology poems. Forgive me, I meant to do it. And I'm going to actually share with you the first one. I'm going to do a little screen share so you can see it. And here we go. This is, here we go. The first one, I'm going to read a couple others as well. But all of these are based on stories and fairy tales. So I want you to think about which famous characters may be making these false apologies, meaning they're not really sorry. This is called This Is Just to Say. This is just to say, I have torn down the water spout, which you obsessively wanted to climb and slide off forever. Forgive me, kick your habit, spin a web, catch a bug. Now, I believe that you will be able to figure out who was making that false apology. Oh yes, it was the Itsy Bitsy Spider. I'm going to read you two more of these. This was, see if you can figure out which character was giving this false apology. It was I who shoved you off the wall. Forgive me, all the king's horses, and all the king's men, they were bored. So, who was giving that false apology? None other than the narrator of the Humpty Dumpty story. Here's one more. This is just to say, I'm the one who stuck the cradle in the tree, which was probably a stupid place to put a baby. Forgive me, I thought that that bough would break sooner or later. Now, as the mother of a very small child who has asked to hear that song many times, anytime I sing Rockabye Baby, I think, what a terrible song about babies that it's falling from a tree. So I think these false apology poems are really funny. I think it's a really fun exercise. I would love to see if you could write a poem like this, reframing a story. I invite you now to move on to last week's lesson, and I will see you next week for a live Zoom poetry reading. And please get in touch, and I will reach out to you about reading a poem next week. Thank you.